The Silent Cry. Deep Space Discovery. Captain Sarah Chen floated through the observation deck of humanity's most distant monitoring station, a facility called Zenith that hung in the darkness between star systems. For 6 months, she had commanded this outpost where nothing ever happened except the endless recording of cosmic background radiation. The station was small, housing only 12 crew members who took turns monitoring deep space for anything unusual. Most days brought nothing but the gentle hum of distant stars and the occasional meteor shower passing through nearby space. Sarah had just finished her 3rd cup of synthetic coffee when the primary detection array began displaying patterns that made her stop mid-sip. The screen showed wavelengths that did not match any natural phenomenon she had encountered during her 15 years of space observation. The signal was deliberately structured, repeating in sequences that suggested intelligence behind its transmission. Her heart began racing as she realized what this might mean. Humanity had been searching for alien life for centuries, and now something was reaching out across the void. She immediately called her second-in-command, Lieutenant James Park, who arrived within minutes still wearing his exercise gear. James had been in the station gym when Sarah's urgent message interrupted his workout routine. Together, they watched as the signal grew stronger, suggesting its source was moving closer to their position. The patterns became more complex as the transmission cleared, revealing layers of information encoded within the basic carrier wave. Sarah knew they needed expert analysis, so she contacted Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's linguistics and communication specialist. Decoding the message. Dr. Marcus Webb arrived at the observation deck carrying his portable analysis equipment and looking more excited than Sarah had ever seen him. Marcus was a thin man in his early 40s who had spent his entire career studying theoretical alien languages and communication methods. Now he had a real alien signal to analyze instead of hypothetical models. He connected his equipment to the main detection array and began running every decryption algorithm humanity had developed for this exact moment. The first breakthrough came after 3 hours of continuous work. Marcus identified mathematical constants embedded in the signal that served as a universal reference point. Any intelligent species would understand prime numbers in basic physics, so these constants provided a framework for translating the rest of the message. Sarah watched as Marcus built a translation matrix piece by piece, using the mathematical references to decode more complex information. The work was slow and frustrating, with many false starts and dead ends. As dawn approached on Earth time, Marcus finally decoded enough of the message to understand its basic meaning. His face went pale as he read the translation appearing on his screen. The message was a distress call from a species calling themselves the Therion. They were a peaceful civilization of explorers and scientists who had never known war or conflict in their 10,000-year history. The Therion had built a society based on cooperation and learning, spreading across multiple star systems without ever encountering hostile life. Their message spoke of beauty and discovery, of worlds connected by shared knowledge and mutual respect. Then the message tone shifted dramatically, and Marcus had to pause his translation work to process what he was reading. The Therion were under attack by something they called the Vex Collective. The distress call described the Vex as a parasitic force that consumed entire civilizations, not for resources or territory, but for reasons the Therion could not comprehend. The peaceful aliens had tried every form of communication and negotiation, offering everything they possessed in exchange for mercy. The Vex had ignored all attempts at peaceful resolution and continued their systematic destruction of Therion worlds. The threat revealed. Marcus worked through the night to extract every detail from the Therion transmission. The message contained technical data about Vex ships and weapons, though the Therion admitted they did not fully understand military concepts. What they could describe painted a terrifying picture of an enemy that had perfected the art of conquest. Vex vessels were enormous constructs that appeared suddenly at the edge of star systems, cutting off all escape routes before beginning their assault. Their weapons could disintegrate planetary shields with ease, and their ground forces overwhelmed any defensive attempts through sheer numbers. The most disturbing information came in the latter part of the message. The Therion reported that the Vex did not simply kill their victims, but instead captured them for unknown purposes. Survivors described seeing massive processing facilities on Vex ships where captured aliens were connected to strange machinery. The Therion scientists believed the Vex were harvesting something essential from their captives, possibly consciousness or life force itself. Those few who escaped these facilities were forever changed, existing in a state between life and death. Sarah immediately transmitted all the decoded information to Earth Defense Command while continuing to monitor the signal. The transmission was growing weaker, suggesting the Therion were running out of power or time to broadcast their plea. Marcus detected coordinates embedded in the message, showing the location of the remaining Therion worlds and the trajectory of the Vex advance. According to the data, the aliens had perhaps days before their entire civilization ceased to exist. The message ended with a desperate appeal to any species capable of helping them, specifically mentioning that they had detected human radio transmissions and knew another technological civilization existed somewhere in the galaxy. Earth's decision. General Patricia Holmesworth commanded Earth defense from a fortress buried beneath the Rocky Mountains. She was a veteran of the resource wars that had nearly destroyed humanity 50 years earlier, and those terrible conflicts had taught her the cost of both action and inaction. Patricia had risen through military ranks by making difficult decisions that saved lives, even when those choices earned her criticism from politicians and civilians. Now she faced the most difficult decision in human history as she studied the Therion distress call with her assembled council of military and civilian leaders. The debate began immediately and continued for hours as representatives argued every possible angle. Some leaders wanted to ignore the Therion plea and focus on defending Earth against this new threat. They argued that humanity barely had the resources to protect its own solar system, much less launch rescue missions across interstellar distances. Others felt humanity had a moral obligation to help any species threatened with extinction, especially peaceful aliens who had never harmed anyone. The discussion grew heated as people accused each other of cowardice or reckless idealism. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto changed the entire conversation when he presented his biological analysis of the situation. Kenji was Earth's leading xenobiologist, despite never having studied an actual alien specimen. He had spent his career preparing for first contact by analyzing Earth's most extreme organisms and theorizing about life that might evolve under different conditions. His presentation revealed something remarkable about humanity's place in the galaxy. The Therion message contained detailed information about their own biology and scattered references to other species they had encountered. Comparing this data to human physiology showed that Earth was an unusually hostile environment that had shaped humanity into something unique. Humans' advantage. Kenji explained that Earth's high gravity, dense atmosphere, and intense radiation exposure had created evolutionary pressures that most alien species never experienced. Humans were incredibly strong by galactic standards, with muscle density that would seem impossible to creatures from low-gravity worlds. Human bone structure could withstand impacts that would shatter alien skeletons, while human skin was thick enough to resist environmental dangers that other species found lethal. Even basic human biology was extreme compared to what the Therion considered normal. The most significant advantage was how humans responded to danger and stress. Kenji presented data showing that human bodies produce chemical cocktails during emergencies that enhance strength, speed, and pain tolerance to superhuman levels. This adrenaline response was humanity's evolutionary answer to Earth's countless predators and environmental hazards. Other species had never needed such extreme survival mechanisms because their homeworlds were gentler places where intelligence alone could ensure survival. The Therion specifically mentioned in their message that they found Earth's conditions terrifying, calling humanity Deathworlders because only the deadliest planets could produce such resilient life. Fleet assembly begins. Commander David Okonkwo received his orders while inspecting the construction yards orbiting Mars. David had overseen the building of Earth's defense fleet, turning theoretical designs into actual warships capable of protecting humanity's expansion into space. He was a practical man who understood both engineering and military necessity, having served as both a combat pilot and a shipyard manager during his long career. Now he had 72 hours to prepare humanity's largest fleet for a mission that would either establish Earth as a galactic power or result in catastrophic defeat. David began issuing commands through his communication network, pulling every available ship from patrol duties and training exercises. The fleet would include everything from massive battleships to small fighter craft, creating a combined force that represented humanity's entire military capability. He coordinated with supply officers to load weapons and provisions, while navigation teams plotted courses to the Therion homeworlds using coordinates from the distress call. Engineers worked around the clock to install experimental weapons that had never been tested in real combat, rushing to give humanity every possible advantage. As ships began gathering in assembly points throughout the solar system, David realized that humanity was crossing a threshold from which there was no return. The decision to intervene in an alien war would announce Earth's presence to the entire galaxy, ending forever the isolation that had defined human history. Whatever happened in the coming battle would determine how other species viewed humanity for generations to come. David hoped that his crews were ready for what they would face in the darkness between stars, knowing that many of them would never return home. The fleet reached full assembly status ahead of schedule, with over 300 vessels ready for immediate deployment. David stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable and looked at the tactical display showing his assembled forces. It was an impressive sight, representing humanity's technological achievement and military determination. But David knew that the Vex Collective had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than Earth, and he wondered if human resilience would be enough to overcome such an enemy. The order came through from General Holmesworth, and David gave the command that would send humanity into its first interstellar war.
Warriors from a harsh world. Journey to the war zone. The human fleet moved through the darkness of space like a swarm of metal predators hunting across impossible distances. Commander David Okonkwo watched the star charts update in real time as his ships traveled toward the Therian homeworlds using faster-than-light drives that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. The journey would take 5 days at maximum speed, giving crews time to prepare for combat against an enemy they had never seen. David used the time to drill his forces repeatedly, running simulation after simulation of possible battle scenarios. Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Torres led the fighter squadrons through practice maneuvers in the vast emptiness between stars. Rebecca had earned her reputation as humanity's best combat pilot during the Resource Wars, where she had flown missions that most people considered suicidal. Her squadron consisted of 200 fighters piloted by volunteers who understood they were heading into unknown danger. Rebecca pushed her pilots hard during training, demanding perfect execution of complex attack patterns that would confuse enemies expecting conventional tactics. She knew that human unpredictability might be their greatest weapon against an enemy that had conquered countless worlds. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto established a medical research center aboard the flagship to study samples of Therian biology that had been included with their distress transmission. The aliens had sent detailed biological data, hoping someone might use it to develop weapons against the Vex. Kenji worked with a team of scientists to understand how Therian physiology differed from human biology. What they discovered reinforced everything Kenji had predicted about humanity's unique advantages. The Therian were fragile creatures adapted to a gentle world where violence was unknown. Their bodies could not produce the stress hormones that made humans dangerous when threatened, leaving them helpless against aggressive species. Marine Colonel Marcus Wright trained his ground forces for boarding actions and close combat scenarios. Marcus was a massive man who had spent 20 years preparing soldiers for conflicts that might never happen. Now his training programs would be tested against alien enemies in environments nobody could fully predict. He drilled his troops on adapting to unknown ship layouts and fighting in various gravity conditions. Marcus emphasized speed and aggression in all training exercises, teaching his Marines to overwhelm enemies before they could respond. He knew that hesitation would be fatal against an enemy that had perfected conquest through countless victories. The fleet received regular intelligence updates from Earth as scientists continued analyzing the Therian distress call. Each new translation revealed more details about Vex tactics and capabilities. The enemy apparently attacked in waves, using smaller ships to test defenses before committing their main forces. Vex ground troops were described as relentless but predictable, following programmed attack patterns that never varied. This suggested the Vex relied on overwhelming force rather than tactical creativity, which might give human forces opportunities to exploit enemy rigidity. First contact with survivors. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Therian space and immediately detected signs of recent destruction. Debris fields marked where space stations had once orbited peaceful worlds, while scattered energy signatures suggested survivors hiding among asteroid fields and dead moons. Commander David Okonkwo ordered rescue operations to begin while keeping the main fleet ready for enemy contact. Search teams fanned out across the system, looking for Therian refugees who might provide crucial intelligence about Vex forces. Captain Sarah Chen led the first rescue mission, taking her ship toward a damaged space station that was broadcasting a weak distress beacon. The station had been a research facility studying cosmic phenomena, housing hundreds of Therian scientists before the Vex attack. Now it tumbled through space with massive holes torn in its hull and life support failing. Sarah's crew worked quickly to evacuate survivors, finding 43 Therian scientists huddled in a shielded laboratory deep within the dying station. The aliens were terrified and confused, barely able to comprehend that another species had responded to their distress call. The rescued Therian were brought aboard human ships where medical teams struggled to provide care for biology they barely understood. The aliens were tall and slender, with multiple arms ending in delicate manipulator appendages, perfect for scientific work. Their skin was pale and almost translucent, showing the bioluminescent patterns they used for communication. The Therian had large eyes adapted for low-light conditions and graceful movements suited to their low-gravity home world. When they attempted to walk on human ships under Earth's standard gravity, they collapsed immediately and had to be carried by medical staff. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto examined the Therian survivors and confirmed his theories about their fragility. The aliens could barely function in conditions humans considered comfortable, requiring special environments with reduced gravity and modified atmosphere. Kenji noted that Therian heart rates increased dramatically when exposed to any form of stress, sometimes reaching dangerous levels just from unexpected noises. The aliens literally could not handle conflict or danger without their bodies shutting down in self-defense. This explained why they had been so helpless against the Vex invasion despite having advanced technology. The Deathworlder revelation. A Therian scientist named Velara became the primary contact between humans and the rescued aliens. She had studied other species throughout the galaxy and understood different forms of intelligence and communication. She was fascinated and terrified by the humans who had rescued her people. She watched human crew members move through their ships carrying equipment that should have been too heavy to lift, working in environmental conditions that would kill most galactic species within minutes. The casual strength and resilience humans displayed seemed impossible to someone from a gentle world. Velara asked Dr. Kenji Yamamoto about human biology and listened with growing amazement as he explained Earth's extreme conditions. She learned that humans evolved on a high-gravity world with a thick atmosphere full of corrosive oxygen. The planet's surface was bombarded by radiation from an unusually active star while experiencing temperature swings that would destroy most habitable environments. Earth's biosphere was dominated by predators and diseases that constantly pressured all life toward greater resilience. Humans had survived this nightmare world by becoming more durable than any species Velara had encountered. The Therian scientist was especially shocked to learn about human violence and warfare. She studied Earth's history and found endless conflicts where humans fought each other with increasing sophistication over thousands of years. Wars that killed millions had driven technological advancement and shaped human psychology toward competition and survival. The resource wars that had nearly destroyed humanity would have annihilated the Therian completely, yet humans had survived and learned from the experience. Velara shared this information with other rescued Therian, and soon the alien survivors were calling humans Deathworlders with a mixture of respect and fear. The term spread through Therian communication networks, reaching other survivor groups hiding throughout their former territory. Refugees who had given up hope suddenly felt a spark of possibility, knowing that creatures from a deadly world were coming to fight the Vex. The Therian could not imagine defeating the parasitic invaders themselves, but perhaps beings who thrived on violence and danger could accomplish what peaceful civilizations never could. Preparing the counterstrike. Commander David Okonkwo convened a strategy meeting with his senior officers and Therian advisors to plan their assault on Vex forces. Velara provided detailed intelligence about enemy ship configurations and attack patterns observed during the invasion. The Vex apparently followed predictable strategies based on overwhelming technological superiority, expecting all resistance to collapse after initial displays of force. They had never encountered a species that became more determined when facing impossible odds, which gave David ideas about exploiting enemy assumptions. Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Torres led her fighter squadrons in chaotic attack patterns that confused enemy targeting systems designed for predictable threats. Human pilots flew aggressively close to enemy vessels, exploiting gaps in point defense coverage while launching kinetic missiles at vulnerable sections of Vex ships. The missiles punched through energy shields optimized for stopping directed energy weapons, causing unexpected damage to enemy vessels that had seemed invulnerable. Human capital ships targeted Vex command vessels with experimental weapons that combined multiple attack vectors simultaneously. Railguns fired depleted uranium projectiles at relativistic speeds, while laser batteries heated enemy armor and missile salvos overwhelmed defensive systems. The coordinated assault exploited weaknesses in Vec's defense doctrine that assumed all species used similar weapon technologies. Enemy shields flickered and failed as they struggled to adapt to attacks from multiple unexpected directions. Colonel Marcus Wright's Marines launched boarding actions against damaged Vex vessels using breach pods to penetrate enemy hulls in dozens of locations simultaneously. The Marines fought through alien corridors using aggression and speed that shocked alien defenders expecting conventional assault tactics. Human Marines would show the Vex what happened when predators encountered creatures more dangerous than themselves. The Vex battle for Therian space had truly begun, and across the galaxy, peaceful civilizations watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated what creatures from a harsh world could accomplish when defending the innocent against predators who thought themselves invincible.